Hello everyone, this is Osiris Frost with part 3 in a series on the Drake Vulture. I've linked the other videos up for you if you haven't seen them yet. Recently, CIG posted a Q&A about the Drake Vulture. As you know, salvage is due out in September with patch 3.3, and along with that comes the full spectrum of salvage-related mechanics, such as scanning and selling, which will make salvage a complete game system. Imagine an implementation along the lines of what we got for mining in 3.2. And while the Vulture is still a ways off, we do have the Reclaimer to try out this new system when it goes live. And there's also going to be a multi-tool that can do a bunch of cool things. Among these is the ability to perform light cutting and welding. One more note before I get started. There was some redundancy in the Q&A questions, so I condensed that repetition down for this video. Now, onto the Q&A. Question: does the Vulture have any special synergy with other Drake ships? For example, the rear of the Vulture looks like it could easily back up to the Caterpillar's front air shield door for easy offloading of salvage. Answer: there are no particular plans to have any synergy with other Drake ships as suggested. However, the idea is interesting and should work in theory with the Caterpillar or other ships of a similar arrangement. Question: the Vulture has 12 SCU of cargo. However, the similar entry-level miner, Misk Prospector, has 128 SCU. With that significant difference of cargo, how will profit differ between the ships? Answer: the Prospector has its 128 SCU capacity spread across its multiple saddlebag containers, but it cannot hold the full 128 SCU at a single time and must detach these containers to keep collecting material. Each container currently holds 8 SCU, so without detaching them, the Prospector can naturally only hold 32 SCU at a single time. Now, this wasn't really an answer to the question that was asked, but they address a related point in the next question, so I'll just move on to that one. Question: is a scant 12 SCU of scrap material going to be economically viable, considering that scrap usually isn't worth much as a commodity? Add to that the cost of fuel, cost of demo charges, and the risk of operating a relatively undefended ship in potentially hazardous environments? Answer: as with all things economy-based, we will be reviewing the profit per hour balance and make adjustments where needed. People should not speculate on the viability of the Vulture based on the current in-game scrap metal prices, as these are not the same as what the Vulture will produce. Internally, we discussed the size of the cargo bay during concept, and made sure that if we need to increase the size of it, it can be brought in line with the other Profession starter ships without requiring a significant rework. Likewise, if we feel the Prospector containers skew the comparison, they can be brought down in capacity. Question: since the Prospector can scan to locate mineable nodes, will the Vulture have similar scanning tech on board to tell its pilot what components are still salvageable and what are not, instead of having to EVA out and check manually? Answer: absolutely. All ships will have the scanning ability, and certain ships, such as the Vulture, have enhanced scanners specifically suited to that role. Question: does the 12 SCU of cargo capacity include the space for storing cubes of salvage, or is it a different hold specifically for that? Answer: the 12 SCU cargo space is the cargo grid for both cubes and scavenged items which you wish to legitimately store. Of course, as in all ships, you can place items outside the cargo grids. However, this has downsides, such as your cargo not being secure and risking being damaged, as well as not being recognized or detected by the kiosk or sales interfaces as legitimate goods for sale. Question: if intact components will typically be more valuable for low-volume salvaging versus compressed scrap, and the Vulture can only secure those items by pilot EVA, why would players find the Vulture more desirable to use for light salvage instead of a better defended and or cheaper fighter craft / light hauler like the Hornet, Cutlass, Freelancer, or Aurora CL? Answer: component salvaging is only one part of the salvage career, and while any ship could technically do this, the Vulture is equipped for the whole process, which will maximize profit from your trips versus just grabbing components alone. The Vulture and other salvage ships such as the Reclaimer come equipped with dedicated salvage scanners that allow you to identify components and their states much easier than non-dedicated ships. So while you could strip every item out of an abandoned ship onto a Cutlass, 90% of it could be such low value that the Vulture owner would return essentially the same end profit by only grabbing the 10% identified as worthwhile. An example to use would be mining in 3.2. Players can just fracture and extract every rock in sight, but without scanning and reviewing their composition and carefully fracturing them, returns will be low compared with players who just specifically target the high-value assets. So you may either happen across a Starfarer wreck and fill up your cargo bay with weapons and components, or a derelict Gladius, which you could fully harvest. You have the flexibility and tools to go either way with a salvage opportunity, and it comes down to operator experience in that case. Question: given that the initial Vulture concept that the community voted for emphasized a ship oriented towards salvaging valuable components over processing large volumes of low-value scrap material, What prompted the shift towards making the Vulture a low-volume, low-value raw material reclamation ship? Answer. During the concept phase, we started out with just the component salvaging process as its key aim, but as we progressed through the concepts, it became clear that this wasn't a particularly interesting or fulfilling role for the ship. As such, we decided to make the Vulture a more rounded introduction to salvage covering all the basic principles. Again, you could pick up the guns off a dead Connie with any Cutlass or Avenger, if that's all you're after. The Vulture offers a more complete salvage gameplay. Question. Considering the Vulture can only carry roughly a snub fighter worth of compressed scrap, why were live-aboard features prioritized over just making it a day tripper with increased storage space for cargo and or better tools for harvesting intact components? Answer. Player accommodations and live-aboard features will have a role in the future. As such, we decided that entry-level ships should have these basic features to support solo players in being able to spend long amounts of time away from base, rather than requiring day tripper-style planning. Question. Will there be any risks associated to salvage akin to mining, i.e. rupturing a fuel line, tractoring in a live wire, or causing a structural collapse? Answer. Definitely. Like mining, we don't want it to be a simple click-and-leave-it mechanic, but to require some level of skill to control the return on investment for salvaged materials. Question. Since the Vulture requires some manual cutting of scrap, will it come with the requisite hand tools, or will those have to be purchased separately? Answer. Every Vulture comes equipped with a multi-tool which can be used for welding and cutting of objects alongside a full complement of salvage charges. Question. So 12 SCU of cargo. Okay, let's try some math. The cargo area must be at least 2 SCU wide and 2 SCU in height, so 2 times 2 times L equals 12 SCU, ergo L equals 3. So the cargo area should be about 3 SCU long. For comparison, one mid-sized power plant, from a Terrapin for example, is about the size of 1 SCU. Conclusion. The most profitable job in salvage is to find used components that are still working, so cutting them into smaller parts is not an option. So the pilot of a Vulture can store up to 12 mid-sized components. Isn't that a little bit small, or did I forget an important aspect of salvage? Answer. As mentioned earlier, we'll be making sure the return is appropriate from an economy point of view, and that one method of salvaging is not vastly superior to another. Components salvaged from a ship are extremely unlikely to be in pristine condition, and their value will drop appropriately, presuming you can find a buyer willing to accept items in that condition. On the flip side, processed and compacted raw materials from salvage will be readily bought by most manufacturing locations and refineries. Question. Are there VTOL thrusters in the ship? The RTV section mentioned the Vulture had VTOL thrusters instead of a gravlev system, but the ship description only has main, retro, and maneuvering thrusters. Answer. This is just an oversight in the ship matrix, and it will be updated soon. The ship has 2 dedicated VTOL thrusters in the front nacelles at the rear of the landing gear, plus the 2 rear main engines will have VTOL capabilities if required. We may just use an additional integral thruster depending on what can be implemented at the time of production, and whether it's required based on the other thrusters on the ship and their capacities. So that's it for the Vulture Q&A. My opinion of this ship remains very high, and I'm happy with having picked one up. If you haven't gotten yours yet, they will be on concept sale until the 18th of this month. If it wasn't clear before, this ship is ideally suited to working with a cargo hauler who can offload you as you collect and process salvage. In fact, that's probably something common to any entry-level profession. So I'm thinking a small team of like 2 Vultures and a Cutlass could swing through a debris field and process anything worthwhile. The Cutlass could store some limited resupply as far as demolition charges and so forth, and then take cargo from the Vultures as they get it, making room to continue until everyone is full up, or the field has been picked clean of everything valuable. I can't wait to try this feature in 3.3. But that's it for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. This has been Osiris Frost. Thanks for watching. That's all for today's show. Thanks for watching. If you're new to Star Citizen, or you know someone who's thinking of playing, you or they can earn 5,000 UEC on your account by registering with my referral code, which you can find in the show notes down below. If you have any questions, feedback, or episode suggestions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. And if you haven't already, please be sure to like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.